This is a presentation by Dana Hatchett about Paul Cézanne's painting, The Card Players. Dana?
This particular painting is my favorite painting by my favorite artist. And I've been looking at this painting. It's in the Metropolitan Museum in New York. I've been looking at this painting for many, many years, and I've looked at it in a lot of different ways. I've looked at it by sketching from it. It helps me to sketch from it, do loose sketches of it. And that's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is looking very pointedly at all of the different edges and boundaries between one form and another. But I think the most rewarding way of looking at this painting is to look at it loosely. Has a lot to do with not forcing yourself into it. It's about looking at it with a kind of loose attention that spreads outside the painting into the wall around it. And these older paintings all have interesting frames too. You can focus on the frames possibly. But it's about allowing this thing, this painting, which was most likely one of his best paintings and one of the paintings that he spent a lot of time on. There's several card player paintings that he painted. And he actually did studies of some of the figures, and those were individual paintings. So this meant a great deal to him as well. Okay. Now, looking loosely, you can start to see how the colors interact. Actually, paintings, especially a painting by Cezanne, is very much of a cinematic experience. It's like a little movie in your mind, but your ability to see the movie and to interact with the movie has to do with how you use your vision while you are doing it. Looking does not have to be such a fixed thing like finding facts. We live in a kind of very factual world.
Well, could you discuss the use of color interactions in this painting?
Color interactions are liberated when you can start seeing the parts of the painting kind of moving around. Like when I look at it, I'll talk about the colors. When I look at it, the figures, the card player on the right starts to move towards the card player on the left. The figure standing in the back stops that motion and then you starts it up again. All of the elements are configured in such a fashion that this is a very tight, very structured painting. And Cezanne had a visual mind unlike anyone else's. He's clearly the most important turn of the century painter that existed. He influenced Cubism, Picasso, all of the later movements. And if you look at complete oeuvres of these people, you'll start to see all of them did little Cezanne paintings to train their eyes to see what this man was seeing. So the colors are warm and cool. The flesh tones, the color of the curtain in the back, they're warm tones. Then there are blues, so there's a dynamic setup in that way. Okay. There's also a dynamic setup of what would be the focal point color, what that might be. For me, the focal point color, the area you go to with your eye, if you look at it for a while, maybe the red of the shirt of the guy standing in the back, or the focal point could be those little the pipes against the wall. Okay. Now there's ways he structures this painting. If you look at the space of the table, that mirrors the space of the rectangle of the painting. If you look at the shapes of the curtains in the back and compare that to the clothing on the figures, especially the figure that's directly under it, you see there's a synonymousness in there. It comes together. But essentially, this whole thing moves and shifts and changes according to the way Cezanne looked at the world. Cezanne looked at the world in such a way that he was seeing not fixed objects, but a world in motion. But it's different than the kind of motion that Monet had. Monet would apply brush strokes at various points, so he was creating everything out of color. But that same fluidity and unification of surface and mark making is put into the function of a more structural sense. Cezanne was a builder for the future. And I would just, if anybody ever has the opportunity to look at this painting or even get nice reproductions of it, Just look at it and let it settle into your mind.
This actual image you could get on your computer. It's from the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and that's what I brought up to help Dana talk about it. So Dana, your YouTube videos are about visual or optical movement, and you talked a bit about movement, but how would a viewer here see movement in a different way? So, like, I'm not a trained eye, and I might be looking at the actual individual card players than what's on the table, but I'm maybe not thinking in terms of movement. I could see how the curtain and the folds of the coat underneath are matching, and I could see how Cezanne's brush strokes in the background have various colors. So, how would you describe movement here for someone who isn't educated in art?
Remember the terminology I was using before, cinematic. It's cinematic in the context that if you approach it not like it's a fixed object, but you approach it like something that you're looking at very, very lightly. And
You mean
maybe
like a movie? When you say cinematic, you mean like a movie, as if I were watching a movie. Like this is actually looks real.
for me, no, not looks real. For me, this thing is in motion, but I have to approach it very carefully. And I've been looking at it for collectively for hundreds and hundreds of hours over the last 40 years. Okay. It is about letting yourself just go in front of it, letting yourself be just sort of letting your vision not impact, not your vision doesn't have to carry your personality. It doesn't have to carry your ego. It doesn't have to carry the kind of fixities of facts and things in the world. Your vision can be a flowing thing, like a wind moving through trees and blowing the leaves, very loose, very non-committal, kind of globally, not globally in a sense, but just like looking and being part of the world. Okay. But this is a very great painting. And there's, if somebody would look it up, they would see all the many things that have been said about it. Cezanne scholars would most likely all basically say the same about this particular painting. But for us observers looking at it, what can this thing show us? And it can show us how interesting and complex the mind of this man was.